this call. So just so that you know that there's a lot of people in the background, but we're going to ask everyone to really turn off their cameras. But first, I just want to say thank you for taking out the time to be here tonight. For those of you who don't know me, I am Celeste Owens, the president of New York City Codas of Color. And I really, really appreciate having Joy present for us. So she's been just my heart. She's just been just very, very helpful to me in every way. And just someone that I really just appreciate being able to do what she's doing for us. So this, we're hoping that's going to be an ongoing thing for us because there's a lot of things we're learning about ourselves as coders, and it's been very beneficial. And I see more, more benefits coming down the road for deaf people, our deaf teens, and on. So thank you all for being here today, and I hope you really gather some great information today. All right. So I'm going to pass it over to Joy. She has her son helping us out as well. So bear with us, okay? Bear with us.
Yeah, yes. And while we're here, I do want to introduce Ben and Tiola. Um, Ben, if you could just come on for a moment.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask everybody else to turn off their cameras. And yeah. All right. I'm going to turn off as
Yeah,
well. Okay.
and
Oh,
I'm always on the lookout for these Coda counselors everywhere, because I kind of at one point assumed that they were like plentiful, and just all over the place. But I do end up like looking for them all over, and I stumbled across Ben who lives in my state. So we're blessed to have him here, and he's been gracious enough to agree to come back and co-host some of these upcoming wellness series workshops. So, like, I just want to put out there as we start this journey into this information, know that like at the end of this, there will be more discussion on this, more ways to talk about it, more ways to heal from it, and more ways to deal with it. And hopefully, the ultimate goal, my personal agenda is to stop some of the continued deprivation and neglect and abuse that some of these kids really suffer through. So um
so before we go ahead, I want to introduce Mary Lourdes, who's going to be interpreting for us tonight, and also Hussein Mello. Both of them will be taking turns with interpreting. So thank you both for being here. Okay. And I'm going to turn off now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ben, I just wanted to give it over to you for a moment to just briefly say hello.
Well, I'm definitely grateful for the opportunity to come and provide any insight, authenticity, transparency, all that to kind of to the table in regards to helping us navigate um, kind of the nuance of being a coda and the impact of living between a lot of different worlds and the responsibility piece of it. And so I'm really, really grateful for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to being a shared time and space and educate. I'm coming in with a learning mindset myself in terms of being able to hear other people's stories and be able to grow in my own understanding of being a coda and how that's impacted myself, my life, and my family. So I'm looking forward to this. So appreciate this opportunity, appreciate the platform that is being provided for this because I think it's a very needed, conversation to lead to action. So looking forward to it. So thank you again, Joy.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for taking this on. And like I know I can be a little bit much.
Not at all.
He's
Not at all. Not at all. Your passion is infectious, and so I appreciate that. Yes.
he's so nice, isn't he? Like he's the therapist that you want. Um Not as nice sometimes. Okay, I'm trying to present this and let's go full screen. And I have to play nice with Carrie. Are you able to see that? Shoot. Okay. Let me speed that. This one, side by side. Yeah. Okay. So, but are you pinned? Is the interpreter pinned? Can you see her? I don't see her on your screen, so don't. So let me start this up and we'll be in business. And I'm definitely not as savvy as she believes I am. Celeste believes I am. But I appreciate you, Celeste, and thank you for letting me be here with you all and giving me this platform to share this information because I believe it's so important. So, deaf children become deaf parents, and this is something that comes out of the work with Catherine White of Ireland, and this is a area that she pushes that we really have to look at this area. There's an information gap here. And when I got this concept, I was like, yes, yes, this is true. And as Codas, we all kind of know, we know, but we really haven't had the language and the understanding around it. And there are Codas that are doing work out there. We're a little spread out, and hopefully we're starting to gather ways to bring everyone together and really shine a light on some of this information. So what I'm trying to do is build a case with you all, and share with you some of the work that I do, and how I treat some of this stuff, and hopefully it helps
There's a
you all.
question in the chat.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, we are not seeing the interpreter. I do not see the interpreter.
Okay, we need
I
to
only
see the
see you,
internet.
Joy, twice and your video. That's all I'm saying. You need to, there is a way to do it, to have it so that you're earmarking three scenes, okay? But we see Joy twice.
So speaker, I need to go up and I need to pin me, right?
Yeah, well,
Pin
you
me
get your help with it.
and then add a pin. Is that better? Yes, you need to should be okay. And then can I still screen share like that? People seem to know much more than me. Let's see.
So I also just want to add that you have to add both of us because we're good. Like right now, we're going to go ahead and just switch just for time.
I'm
Uh,
gonna add that right now.
we want
And
to
then you can go on.
that it's both of us that needs to be switched out.
We're there. Don't see the interpreter.
No.
Oh, there he is. There he is. Okay.
Well, he's not on now. He was before when he spoke.
If you screen share, it might be a larger window for the interpreter too, because the interpreter is a small box option. And in the message, it says to, if you screen share instead.
This one. Okay. Is that better?
Much better. Yes, nice job.
Okay. There we go. Thank you. See, I am not that savvy. Oh, my therapy cat's here. So because I am a therapist, one of the things, because we're going to be talking about some things that are difficult. So I'm going to ask that people get some sort of thing to either write with, a paper, anything that you can just jot things down on as we go. Or some people like to dictate things into their phone. Whatever you need, that's going to be what we call a container. And this will be a space for you to kind of put down ideas and then, come back in, because there's going to be a lot of new information and different information. So, what we want is some dual awareness of, oh yeah, this happened. And we'll be getting a lot of stories, a lot of flooding as we talk about some of these things. And flooding is when you get all these memories and it's like, oh yeah, this happened to me, this happened to me. So what I want is for put them down, and then we can figure out how we're going to process them as we go. So for now, we will call this our containment. Anything that comes up, just put it in there so that you have the ability to come back and get more of this information. So one of the I grew up in a DBT agency as a therapist. And DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy. It is third wave cognitive behavioral therapy. And this is the precursor to trauma work. And this teaches dialectics. And what it is two things being true at the same time. And when you have people who are traumatized, who are, have chronic issues, chronic discrimination. Uh, there's a lot of thought distortions, and this is where theory of mind comes in. I know we have a theory of mind expert who's joining us, and people get stuck in certain mindsets and ways of thinking. And this is a way to have more open-minded thinking, to be less hurtful with your thinking. And it is just a way to be open and non-judgmental. And so as we go forward, I ask all of you to be with me. I okay, so just be, try to stay as non-judgmental as possible. And dialectical behavioral therapy is there's a non-judgmental stance. The belief is that everyone's doing their best. We can always try harder. That's the growth mindset. But everyone's doing their best. And it's just be curious, be open, and everybody has their own experience, even if it's not your experience. So everyone has their own frame of reference. And again, I'm not here to tell anybody that, what you experienced was trauma or traumatic. It may not have been traumatic for you. And in today's discussion, we're really going to be focusing on families who have relatively healthy coping skills. I mean, these aren't children who come with, extra, familial issues. These are just your average deaf child. So, we're in our discussion today, we're going to go with, this person is likely, their family's okay. They just, you probably didn't communicate with them well, which is a huge thing. But other than that, there's the trauma, the abuse, physical violence, and all those things. Those are like additional uh, issues that cause harm. So we're going to be focusing on people who are relatively healthy. So we just want to have honest conversation, no blame, and no defensiveness. This is about the system that our parents are raised in, that we're raised in, and language and justice, which is that overall framework of this language deprivation stuff that we're talking about. And when we talk about trauma healing and how we approach healing from trauma, uh, where we go is recognizing depth of harm. And we have to understand the depth of harm so that we can actually correct this situation. Because if my arm is broken here, I can't go around just putting a band-aid on it or, taking care of it that way. What I have to do is the longer it goes, I may have to break it and reset it. But I do have to admit that it's broken, and that's the only way that I can have it truly repaired. And so that's kind of what we need to do in our situation. We need to really explore what the depth of harm is of this language deprivation situation so that we can actually start understanding what it is, naming what it is, and then fixing what it is. So, um, and before we get into language deprivation, there's some confusion sometimes on this specific concept. So language exposure versus language access, and they're different. Uh, if I posted, Arabic letters all around my home, they don't have meaning to me if I don't study those letters. They're just art. Um, so language can be present in the environment. It doesn't mean I'm necessarily benefiting from it. Um, and that's a lot different than me being able to read those letters and studying it, or having somebody, acclimate me, or me becoming familiar through, other various means. But the difference between language exposure, which, I think deaf children do have language exposure because the people are talking in the environment that they're in.
Joy,
But
Joy, the interpreter is not being seen.
can you see it? Jack, yeah, we both have it. We can both see him on our screens. Uh, if What do we have to make it bigger? Side by side speaker. Yeah, if you go up to that corner.
I've tried it. I get everybody, or I only get Joy. I don't get the interpreter. I don't know it sounds like I'm not the only one.
If you can pin the interpreter.
It was an option, and then I think something was fixed, but then it booted. The interpreter only has a chat option. There's no pin. You can't pin them anymore. Side by side. Oh, dynamic gallery is only if you have the latest upgrade, and I just realized I'm one behind. Oh, there
Is it
is
better
the
if I put the
interpreter.
spotlight on the interpreter?
The
For
interpreter
you
is
guys?
now on, but Joy, you are now
Joy's
gone.
gone because she's not the spotlight anymore. Both
Ah,
of
there
them
we
in
go.
the spotlight now?
Yes, perfect.
Is that good?
Great.
Hooray!
Thank
Okay,
you.
perfect. If you guys have it in gallery, it should be the picture with both of them.
Okay, it's just
Side by
echoing
side
because
speaker, because both
it's
of us are
fine.
on. All right.
It's just echoey because one of the speakers is on in your side. But yeah, okay.
Hopefully we're good now. And so and we see this uh, with deaf households. They actually, can communicate with the child. They are getting information from the child, interacting with the child, or in households where they do sign language, which there are not very many households that do that in actuality. So there is a difference between language exposure versus language access. So what is language deprivation? Well, delayed or incomplete access to a fully accessible first language during that early window of learning. And incomplete first language acquisition means disrupted developmental sequencing. So when language is tied to quite a few things in the mind. And this is where like our early on, we're born with all of these neurons in our brain, and our brain will prune them. Answer the question. Okay. Sorry, I got distracted. So early on, we're born with all of these neurons, and when we don't use them all, we kind of prune them. What we do is we kind of throw them into a void. They're still there. They used to believe that when they were pruned, they were completely gone. But current science and research says that that's not exactly true. However, if a child does not have exposure to a language early on, it to make up for those uh, neurons and those cells that were pruned, it's almost impossible to make up for that. So we're going to go over some of the symptoms, and then as we go through, we're going to be discussing some of the specifics of each one. So these are the symptoms of language deprivation, and language deprivation is not an official diagnosis. It is a cluster of symptoms that we have noticed, and they think that maybe in the next iteration of our diagnostic and statistical manual that there may be something in there about that. But again, there needs to be more research on it. So cognitive or cognition and thinking is affected. Delayed abstract reasoning, concrete thinking style, that's the black and white thinker. Difficulty with cause and effect, impaired executive function, poor problem solving, reduced working memory, disorganized thought patterns, and difficulty sequencing ideas. So, for language does something very important for us. It helps us organize thoughts. And when you don't have a language, it's very hard to categorize things. So, memories are kind of stored haphazardly. They're not stored in certain areas. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, it's a movie about feelings. It's a Disney movie. There's a concept in there, and they have these long tubes, and then it goes to like Family Island and Fun Island and Friend Island. And it's kind of like that in the brain. And, in this situation, well, a lot of those islands have collapsed or they were never formed in the first place. I mean, if I can't form an island, a fun island, if I don't know what fun is. And basic concepts are things like car. If I don't know what a car is, I don't categorize them under cars or vehicles. I just store them in the brain in different spaces, not in appropriate categories. So sometimes it's very hard to follow steps because that's not the way their brain has organized things. So reduced working memory is another part of it, and this has to do with this part of the brain, the survival part of the brain, being overdeveloped. And so that's one of the big reasons that happens. And there are variety of reasons for that. One is survival, and when you're in survival mode, which is a PTSD thing, your frontal lobe is not on. So this is a challenge for deaf education, and we'll be talking a little bit more about education as we go on. So uh black and white thinking, it's either this or this, and that's often trained into deaf children. They don't give the deaf children the ability to tell me what you want, tell me what you think, because they can't communicate with them. They'll say, do you want chocolate or vanilla? I like strawberry. Well, I don't really care, and they kind of limit them quite often just due to their ability or lack of ability to communicate. So that language communication, there's language disfluency, there's language disruption, and we see it. Limited vocabulary because they're not getting that information in a way that's accessible. Fragmented and simplified expressions of I'll tell you later. I didn't, it's not important, or he's just being stupid, or he's dirty, or he's rude. Like everyone's laughing. I want to laugh. What's so funny? So we don't always understand all the cues that are going on, difficulty understanding complex language, abstract ideas, implicit language. English is very implicit, ASL very explicit. So it's very hard to understand sometimes the meaning of what somebody's saying. Poor narrative structure, and reporting on their own life events. Timelines aren't something that is important when you don't have a structure. Like you'll remember things, but maybe not in chronological order. You might remember, 7 years old and 13 years old all jumbled up rather than in different years, only because like the experience was the same and not necessarily how you understand the timeline. So, being a reliable self-reporter with someone for someone with language deprivation, very difficult to get. And they don't have access to their own history. Often they don't know what their own history is. And then difficulty expressing internal states. And then this one is super important. I don't think it really is understood how important it is. This is emotional attunement. And this is key for every relationship that you have in life. So if your caregiver cannot emotionally attune to you, you don't learn how to self-regulate or how to co-regulate well. So this causes a lot of issues later on in life, and some of the therapies I do focus on this specifically, pre-verbal emotional attunement. So I do a lot of work in that area just because it is so it influences almost every interaction that person has, because every interaction they have is colored with whatever they're feeling, they're thinking, and it may not even be accurate. So when we have emotions, we learn to interpret the emotions, and emotions are chemicals, right? Those are chemical reactions in the body, and our feelings are the interpretations of those emotions. And if you don't have a good grasp of what's going on, your interpretation of that chemical may not be accurate. And also, delayed first language acquisition also causes like memory issues. So if you don't know the context of the things that are going on, you may understand that you were there and that you felt a certain way, but you don't understand why you felt that way. So there's a lot of emotional confusion caused by someone who was not able to emotionally attune to that child. So symptoms continued. Here we go. Academic, reading delays, writing difficulties, grammar challenges, academic underachievement, and then difficulty learning new concepts. And again, we go back to here's why. If your frontal lobe is not on, and because you're not calm, you're not, within a healthy window of tolerance for emotions, for thoughts, then deaf education will never work unless we can get these kids calmed down, or out of survival mode. Um, uh, in addition to social relational issues, there is social isolation, missing all of those conversations, misunderstanding social norms, difficulty with new relationships. If you wanted to have a friend outside the deaf community, like, what do you do? Or, if you're the only deaf child in a school of hearing people, it can be very difficult. And sometimes even my own communication, like say as a deaf person, may be judged critically by other deaf people. So I'm not comfortable because I'm not fluent in sign language, whatever the reasons are. So there are quite a few additional difficulties there, and then reduced social reciprocity. So transactional. A lot of these relations can be more transactional than they are just reciprocal. So emotional and psychological, emotional dysregulation. We see.
No, right.
I hear somebody talking. Oh,
Yeah,
I don't know.
they're trying to switch, and Hussein came back on, but didn't realize that Mary didn't get back on. So,
Okay.
so
Thank you.
they got to work it out, I think.
Thank you. So emotion dysregulation, and of course that comes because the child doesn't understand their emotions and has not been taught emotional regulation skills. It's very hard to teach, a child to emotionally regulate themselves when you can't communicate to that child. So difficulty identifying emotions, and that comes from not being able to understand what that chemical is, and not having good explanations around that, or even comfort. Stop crying, or you can't do that, or no, are very common. Shutting down, stopping that behavior, trying to. Frustration and anger, low self-esteem, internalized inadequacy. I don't know how many times you've ever heard this, but is it because I'm deaf? Like, did they do that because I'm deaf? Is that why they did that? So it always comes back to like that one thing that they believe it could. It's probably that. It's because I'm deaf. They don't trust me. It's because I'm deaf. Why does he keep coming in here? It's because I'm deaf. They looked at me. And there are much higher trauma exposure rates in the deaf community than there are in the hearing community comparatively. So that is a thing, and I do have a few numbers I'm going to share with you, but there's more. There's more symptoms. There's still more. Behavioral issues that we see: impulsivity, aggression or withdrawal, oppositional behaviors. They used to have a diagnosis of oppositional defiant, and you still hear that, but that's more of old school approaches. Now we see it as like PDA, persistent demand for autonomy, and that attitude or tension is because, well, they really want to do it. They just are having difficulty emotionally regulating that. And then maladaptive coping strategies come up from this. And maladaptive coping strategies, we mean poor coping skills, unhealthy coping skills, unhealthy choices, anger, sex, drugs, alcohol, any of those things, gambling. There's a lot of behavioral issues that people have used to adapt to this really depressive situation, which takes us right into those mental health presentations. Deafness is a depressive condition. ADHD is a depressive condition. Chronic pain is a depressive condition. And so, if you face everyday discrimination, it really goes along with feeling bad about it. And anxiety, very high in the deaf community, very high in the Coda community too. So with anxiety, there's a lot of fear of the unknown, because people who have limited access to information need more information to feel comfortable. Like, I need to know, like, who's going to be there, how long are they going to go. So an example of this is I had my former roommate, deaf of deaf, and he had a brother who was hearing. He said, gosh, my brother is so dumb. He's so dumb. He's like, what do you mean? He said, well, my parents are deaf. So what I have to do when I leave the house is I have to say, I'm going here. I'm going here. These are the people that are going to be there. Here's some phone numbers. This is the time. And I give them all the information and then I go do what I want. But my brother, hearing, of course, my brother, he just says, bye, I'm going to my friend's house. And my parents get so upset about that that they, where, what time, when are you going to be back? And if the more resistant he is in answering, the more likely they are to get in the car and follow him and show up at the friend's house just to make sure, because he's keeping too many secrets, where he was probably going to do what he said he was going to do. But that extra information, my roommate was able to like recognize. If I give them all that extra information, they're going to be okay. But the other code, he didn't realize. So Codas, more information, better, and they don't ask too many questions. So um, we do have anxiety. We also have trauma symptoms. Uh, Complex trauma symptoms go along with that. I mean, in addition to other traumas that deaf people experience in their lives, but complex trauma, that everyday trauma. I specialize in trauma, and I give out the PCL-5 test. I perform that test all the time. And in the deaf community, that test is an 80-point test. And that test comes from the military. That is the PTSD test. And that tells us, are you meeting the criteria for PTSD? And again, it's a military test, and the military threshold for likely PTSD is 44. And for civilians, it's 33. So, anything above 33 for a civilian, non-military, is 33. But with deaf people, I don't ever see under 50, which is higher than the military threshold. So I know that deaf people, even relatively healthy deaf people, carry a lot of trauma symptoms. Um, so that causes health issues. So anyway, uh, so misdiagnosed psychosis can also happen too. Uh, Deaf people are often labeled paranoid, um, but I don't believe that that's necessarily true. I mean, they might be paranoid, but hearing people talk about deaf people around deaf people all the time. So when you ask a deaf person, do you believe that they're, that people are talking or they're talking about you? And they're like, yes. Like they're not paranoid. People are talking about them right in front of them all the time. And so that comes up. And we have another individual who severe language deprivation, only attended school for less than half a year in that person's entire life. And that was when they were a little bit older, as a teenager. And they never had any exposure to language other than that very brief time that they were exposed to school. But how they were kept calm was through substances. And there was, a lot of substance use in that family. And when that was stopped, because, the family circumstances changed, that individual had to stop those substances. And stopping substances sometimes can lead to psychosis, depending on what the substance is. Um, So that person has a mental health diagnosis that I'm not sure is accurate. I don't believe is accurate, but we can't take them off the medication because taking them off the medication will cause the type of symptoms that will confirm a diagnosis. So there's just a lot in the mental health and deaf world, there's a lot. So personality disorder mislabeling, also does happen. Um, Borderline personality disorder is one that gets diagnosed quite a bit. Uh, and there are a lot of behaviors that look like borderline personality disorder. If you're not familiar with borderline personality disorder, it's not actually a personality disorder. It is on the borderline of personality disorders, and it's specifically on the borderline of two. One is histrionic, which are kind of emotional, demonstrative individuals, and narcissistic. And this is one that I see in a lot of people's concerns, their thoughts, or their anger, or their experiences. And even in the literature, that narcissism is a part of that mental health presentation. And I don't believe that most the people who are called narcissists would actually meet the criteria for narcissism. But that borderline behavior is feels narcissistic because it stems from that theory of mind, that early childhood development where everything is about me. And it's not selfishness, but it is that they have not developed their mind adequately in the stages that they should have. So we have that. And then we have, again, those like behavioral disorders. Um, that are associated with the maladaptive coping skills, and also anger. We have aggression. um, we have a whole wide variety of things that are associated with language deprivation. And I don't know if the schools in your area are schools. They're growing in terms of the teams of people that they have to come and physically control children at the school who are physically and emotionally out of control. So we're seeing a lot more of that these days. Anyway, so usually language deprivation is the main cause, and there are those other symptoms too. But oh, you thought we were done? Okay, no, there's more. There's more. Anyway, so identity development. There's identity confusion, reduced autonomy, dependency on others, delayed social maturity, and difficulty with self-concept. So these are very similar and mirror a lot of Coda stuff too. Because if it's hard to feel loved and accepted by your family when they won't talk to you. And like my mom felt that. I know she felt that. She expressed that to me. But my mom was like beloved in her family. Everybody loved my mom. But she didn't feel like, they loved her as much as they loved me, because I was hearing. I don't know. Um, eh, this is some of the stuff that we see in books like Leo Jacobs' book, A Deaf Adult Speaks Out. Having more deaf-led experiences will, address this. We also see this in Mask of Benevolence, where that LOC, dependency on others, and that's locus of control, uh, victimhood. Everything's happening to me, and I don't make things happen. The system is, it's everything else, and there's no ownership, there's no feeling of autonomy, there's no, self-determination. It gets very confused. So we see that quite a bit, that locus of control. Delays social maturity. We we see that, we hear that. I hear that a lot in deaf hearing relationships, a lot. And then knowledge and information. So dinner table syndrome is a thing. Um, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the statistics on incidental learning. And the statistics are, if they're completely true and accurate, uh, they range. So the statistics are anywhere between 75 to 95% of the information that we have as hearing people is incidental. Like that, it's just information that you get outside of school from the air, from the neighbor, from dinner, from the radio, podcasts, whatever you're doing. Um, so if we reverse that, deaf people have or have access to, uh, if we go with those numbers, between 5 and 25% of what people with normal hearing have access to. Uh, so what that leads to is a fund of information deficit, and we call that FOI. And if you're an interpreter or you're around the interpreting community, this is something that we've talked about. And a lot of this stuff was like, this is interpreting stuff. Why isn't this applied, heavily in the deaf arena? However, so the more knowledge and the more education that a person has, the better they can interpret. The more that an interpreter knows about that subject, the more they can explain it, interpret it accurately. Um, for me, I'll give you an example. I love fish, and not to eat them, but to look at them. And I went from like a regular size tank to a much larger tank, which had um, another tank underneath it, which is called a sump, I believe, tank. And that's how you filter water through a larger tank. And my husband and I, who is deaf, my husband is deaf, we went to the fish store to buy this tank. And there was a nice man there who was hearing, and he was explaining, okay, when you go home, here's how you set it up. You take this hose and you put it there. And then this one, it goes into that one there. And then this other hose here, not the clear one, the darker one, and not the air hose or that tube. That one goes over there. And here's where you're going to put that one. I I have no framework for that. I have no clue. Like, is it this hose? Is it the hard? Is it the rubbery one? Is it the hard one? Like, is it the thin one? Is it the little air hose? My husband's going to have to set this up for me when we get home, and I have to explain this to him. And you are not helping me, man. And then the heavens open, and out walks this person, and some deaf dude works at this fish shop. And he just goes, "Oh," and he starts explaining this. I was so like relieved because this I understand. And he was able to like, oh, and my husband was like, "Oh, totally. Yeah. Everything was great." And like this, that was I didn't have a fund of information. I didn't have any knowledge about what the guy was talking about to visually represent it to my husband. So in that situation, my FOI was low. And how we kind of represent this in the interpreting world and, in deaf world and in some very specific trauma treatments is when it's adaptive information. So if we get a concept, we have concept A, and then it kind of skips and we miss something in between here. We miss a word or we miss something. The more information you have, the more able you are to fill in this gap of information that's missing. And, sometimes if you're interpreting and you work with a professor who's maybe not that great at explaining things, if you have general knowledge of that, you can still interpret his words probably better than he's getting them out. Um, so, in this situation, we fill in that information with our own incidental information, all this other stuff that we've studied and whatnot. For deaf people, they don't have that extra ancillary information to put in there. And so therefore, they can't get from A to C without this information because it's missing. So we have that. And some of these pictures up here are like that world knowledge, pop culture, um, television, books. I don't know if anybody drove with their parents when they were young and you had a long trip. My mom was always like, yeah, true, true. Yeah, that's right. I think so. I agree. And I was like, you having a good conversation? She's like, yeah. So, those long trips are difficult, but it causes a lot of rumination. Uh, so there's also difficulty understanding systems, school, government, relationships, um, depending on the system that they came from. So, uh,
Interpreter hasn't switched. They can't see it. It's good now.
thank you. Uh, so when the deaf child grows up in that system and doesn't have uh, the experience that someone with hearing has, they're navigating a system without any information in it. So when the child, their hearing child goes to a hearing school, they don't have that information because they didn't go to a hearing school. If they went to a residential school, an oral school, or something like that, there might be differences in how those things work. Government systems, relationships, those all kind of suffer. And then developmental milestones can be different, in terms of achievement. Um, Reduced life opportunities, job opportunities, school opportunities. My husband, for example, he was like number one defensive end in the state, and he was offered a scholarship to a university in his home state. And he went there, and they were like, "Oh, you're deaf. Like, oh, we can't help you. Like, we don't know." So rather than going to that school, he did something else. And then systemic marginalization. So, going back to that poor health literacy and, this kind of systemic, these barriers, there's a lot of deaf people who put off healthcare or, appointments and things like that because it is so frustrating. I don't know if there's going to be an interpreter there. I don't know if I'm going to like this interpreter or I know this interpreter, or will, I show up, we go up at the appointment, no interpreter, and then we walk out, and the interpreter shows up. What if I get lost? Oh my gosh. So many things, so many things. Oh, so if given all of those symptoms, uh, if we look at Maslow, and I love Maslow because this is a very clean framework, very easy to see. Language is across all of these domains. So foundationally, like those are the things that your parent has to do for you in order to not have CPS involved in their life. Those are the basic things. And when deaf people say, "Oh, that person's so lucky, their parents signed," I cringe a little bit and I say, "Well, that's great for them." But at the same time, for me, that's the bare minimum. Talking to your child, like that's way down there on that bottom of the pyramid. And so, structurally, if that bottom pyramid isn't, done well, like how do you feel safe? Like, how do you feel safe if you don't understand the rules, if nobody explains things to you, if the rules seem arbitrary? Because that happens a lot. Oh, you told me that these were the rules. Oh, but there's a whole bunch of rules that we didn't talk about. Oh, but wait a minute, you said these. So it can be very confusing. So if I don't feel safe, how do I move up to feeling like I belong? Or how do I communicate with my family? Because like they're all talking to each other. That's what families do. Like my family doesn't do that with me. That means love for them, but not for me. And then that esteem. If my family can't even love me, then what? Like how can I even love and respect myself? And then how do I ever get to that Zen part of my life? How do I self-actualize, and how do I have my self energy take over, and how can I trust my higher self when the basics just have not been met? So that's an introduction to some of the issues with language deprivation, and it is just after 4 my time. Let's take a break, a little bio break here, and we will all come back in 10 minutes. What time is it? It is 4:05, 7:05 your time, so at 7:15. We'll see you in a minute. All right. I'm back. I can't see everybody except who's saying. Oh, I did share the PowerPoint in the chat, and I've been working on quite a few presentations, and my interpreters will tell you that this one isn't quite finished, because it doesn't have all of the things that I wanted to. So I'll be adding to it. So if you're looking for like specific references and stuff, um, I'll be adding those in. Okay, well, so what does happen when deaf children grow up and they have this history of language deprivation, of language injustice? What then? They get pregnant and they have what? This magical child. Either way, they're going to be blessed. If they're deaf of deaf, like amazing. Everybody's always like, those kids are so great. They're so smart. They're so lucky. And if they are hearing, then for some reason, we kind of magically think like they're different. They're not going to be affected by any of this stuff, this deaf stuff. But I I have to disagree. So, in my experience, that's not the case. So, language deprivation does not end with the child. It does become part of the environment that the next child is raised in. So, if this was mom and dad's environment, like that becomes the environment that they provide to their child, and uh, the way that those things work. Coping, it can be modeling, and then silence becomes habit. It becomes the norm. We just don't talk about it, or we can't talk about it for some reason. Um, and it keeps going. So, from trauma models, what they tell us is that people parent from their experience. And this usually goes in one of two ways. When you've had, a traumatic childhood or a traumatic condition during your childhood, um, you can model the coping skills that you learned, or and healthy or not, or you can overcorrect some things, like if my father smoked. Some people will either smoke, or they, oh, I will never smoke because my dad smoked and this happened to him. So that there can be like that overcorrection of very strong reaction to whatever the behavior was. So that happens. The adaptations occurred because of, the things that were going on in their life. And this includes a lot of those unhealthy behaviors, a lot of the challenges that are faced by these deaf people. And it's very preventable. This is all very preventable, which is even worse. It's because they just didn't have access to whole language and information. So if a deaf child grows up in an environment with limited language access, gaps in communication, reduced emotional attunement, and chronic stress, that's where they're at. Having a child, whatever the child's hearing status, does not change that at all. What it does is that's the baseline for the child. And, if we begin to look at other trauma models, well, epigenetic models tell us that, if mother is very activated emotionally, those are chemicals that are being shot through the body. And those come through the interpretations that we have in our mind of certain behaviors. And we can really work ourselves up. And there are a lot of deaf people who have, depressive and anxiety conditions. And when I have this chemical that rages through my body and I have a fetus in my body, what I'm doing is I'm priming that fetus with that chemical. So the more chemical you have, the more cortisol you're producing, the more stress in your pregnancy, the more chemical is given to that fetus. So if you have a parent who's going through like everyday discrimination, everyday trauma, and this is where we get like multiple layers when we look at intersectionality and we look at, all of the different things that make us human. Uh, those layers can be very thick, depending on, where you're from, what skin color you have, what gender you are, what your sexual orientation is. So all of this it gets passed on, and it can start in utero for us. For anybody. And, if we look at birth order, like there's a whole deep dive into birth order, like why is number one that way? And, compared to number two or the middle. Um, well, because mom felt a certain way during that pregnancy. So, uh, usually. So there are ways to deal with that. But it's not part of today's work. But codas are not outside this story of what's going on with our parents. We're born right into it. We are fed those chemicals, and you hear codas like, "Oh, I came out and I interpreted for the doctor." Uh, that happens, and we are raised by people who have adapted, have communication gaps, and then what do? We have to adapt. We have to understand these communication gaps. We have to understand them better than everybody else because we have this magical hearing that somehow gives us all of this infinite wisdom of all of the hearing people, and all the language and all the things So there's a lot of expectations from us on both sides, on both sides. So we do get stuck in the middle there. But the conditions of our parents, because of the language deprivation, educational marginalization, employment inequities, economic disparities, healthcare barriers, social exclusion, chronic stress, higher abuse rates, and then lack of access to mental health care. And then the children that are living inside the system that's doing this to their parents also has to step into roles earlier. Interpreters, navigators, meaning makers, protectors, and in my mind, I don't like the thought of a bridge. It could, and we use that word a lot. I've used it a lot, like Codas are a bridge, but that kind of implies that like we're sound and we're structural and go ahead and just stomp all over me. I can take it. But we're more like in the role of an emissary when we're young. You know, go tell him this and go tell him that, where an emissary doesn't have any power in that situation. They're just the messenger. And for us, we are often the messenger and we are the ones who take the brunt. And, you know, given some of the discussions that have been going on about Codas and what the Coda signs are, like we could come up with a whole lot of them. You know, is it like, oh, Coda is like, oh, tell him, oh, okay, oh, tell him, it could be a lot of things. It could also be like, are we shields? Because we have to shield ourselves here. We have to shield ourselves here. Like if we really want to get into it, we have to acknowledge that codas are part of this discussion. We're part of it. We go through it with our parents alongside of them. And there are, you know, other models about adjacent discrimination, secondary discrimination, which they don't talk about much in the healing community. Like a vicarious trauma. Now they're just like, did you know that counselors can get vicarious trauma? That's like a new thing that they're really kind of pushing now. And I'm like, interpreters did this a long time ago, legally. But those are all very real things. And we as children also have courtesy stigma. Doesn't that sound so nice? Courtesy stigma. You know, people think certain way about our parents that is extended to us. You know, like, oh, it's not that that deaf family with the hearing children, or that deaf couple. It's that deaf family. You know, those deaf people, and they're talking about us too. We're kind of thrown into that whole mix. So we get labeled a lot, we get put into roles, and it's not necessarily our parents who are doing it. It is the system who is doing it. So just, you know, if you could, in your own minds, um, who is the first person who said, you know, watch out for your parents, take care of your parents, you know, make sure your mom's okay, or, you know, do this for your dad, or, you know, go with them. For me, it was my grandparents. My grandparents were the first to kind of pass that responsibility onto me. Like, make sure you answer the phone when it rings, you know, those kind of things. So, you know, we get our information early, and it's not necessarily from our parents. They're just living within the system that was created for them, and we get the byproducts of that system, and we just have to somehow kind of hang out with it. And when we do these studies and these uh, questionnaires that we do in mental health, one of them is the ACE, and I think probably everybody here has taken this. You know, doctors ask it, and you know, most people ask it. And it's just 10 questions, and these 10 questions are about traumatic things that happened in the home. And what this study shows is the higher the score, the higher that kind of toxic stress in the home, the more likely that person is to have negative health outcomes, either mental health or physical health. So when someone, you know, says, well, I used to be able to eat things, but now, you know, I can't eat gluten and I can't eat this anymore. You're like, okay, we've got some inflammation going on, or I hear fibromyalgia or lupus, or they don't know what the diagnosis is, but there's a lot of inflammation in the body. We have to go, we go back to this one. You know, what is your ACE score? If it's higher, if there's only 10 questions, then you're much more likely to have a lot of these issues. And so for deaf people, I believe, yeah, four. The average is four or more. And so a four or more is a high risk category. Major health issues, toxic stress, so a high level of cortisol, just kind of in general across the board. And I don't know if that's because of everyday discrimination or because of the additional trauma that they experience, but and in addition to that, information deprivation. So there have been studies very specifically on that, that ACE is tied to their language, right? So exposure overall of trauma, deaf have higher rates of domestic violence, abuse, and neglect in general. Because if my family teaches me neglect, I may choose someone that's comfortable. That person will also neglect me because that's what's comfortable for me. Not that I like it, it's just I'm used to that behavior. And that becomes that intergenerational trauma that is so horrible. So higher PTSD symptoms among deaf individuals, which I can absolutely attest to. I very much so. And then that cumulative, that complex and compound trauma exposure of every single day it's something. So abuse rates also from deaf population studies, 36% physical abuse by a parent, 30% sexually abused, 23% bullying. And these are all some of those ACE categories that they mark off. And that peer bullying, oh, we get that one quite a bit. And especially nowadays, because this isn't getting any better. I believe it's worse and it's getting worse uh, because we don't have the systems in place that teach deaf people how to be deaf. Our deaf leaders have all, died, burnt out. They've gone away, or they're just not there. And our deaf clubs are going away. Arizona just lost its only deaf school, which disproportionately affects our Native American community here. So I eh, there's so many things that are going on, that all of this is probably going to get a little bit worse. Here in Arizona we have very large reservations, and a lot of them don't have running water or electricity to their homes, let alone access for remote education or anything like that. So that's just one little piece of, this is getting worse. And when we have kids who are now going to be mainstreamed, or, into other programming because our deaf school just closed, well, we're going to have, just more incidents of children not understanding how to advocate for themselves, how to, be assertive and, having their own needs met. And for Codas, what I see this meaning is that there will be a whole group of Codas who never had a deaf club, never had parents who advocated for themselves or knew how to. So we're going to see a whole generation of Codas who really do not have access or understanding or the resources or community that even, some of us of this older generation, this deaf club generation have. So I do believe it will get stronger, because even I know people like, there's just a great technology. You can just get an implant and you can just use your captioning thing on your phone. Okay, no. Um, but my kids have even been relied on in this day and age. So I very much know that people still treat Codas the same way that they've always treated Codas. So if there is an intergenerational transmission for us as Codas, it would be in this vein. It would be something like this. We don't have one yet. we're trying to forge new ground here. We're all working together. We're all trying to figure this out. But deaf child language deprivation are the way their parents were marginalized, even within their own families. And I believe that their families love them. That's true at the same time, right? But for some reason, when they did the best that they could at that time, but we know better now, right? We know better now. So we've got to work on that part. Adult deaf parent adaptive strategies, depending on how healthy their family was, that affects the coda. And then that's that developmental environment. And I can't say like these are the things that we're going to get from this. I don't really know. I don't really know because this is where like we're having the problem. So survival strength does not come without cost. Well, there's it's under there somewhere. So high adaptation can coexist with an invisible burden. Codas are can be very functional. They or appear very functional. There's a lot of imposter syndrome, and you know we haven't even talked about what the coda symptoms are, because if you are at the age of 7, given some adult responsibility, that's a lot of responsibility to be given to a 7-year-old, and that feeling of overwhelm or responsibility that can carry throughout your life. So codas sometimes as adults still have that mindset of the 7-year-old who you know doesn't know what they're doing, but it has to like show everybody that they do. So we do have our own little quirks, and that will be in the next workshop, the next wellness series. Share shop, I think. So, what is the real problem here is that we have had a very hard time widening the lens of deaf issues to codas. I don't know why. I think I don't know if they don't want to share the spotlight, and I know that there is jealousy from deaf parents to coda children. I've heard that directly in my clients. I've heard that in my mom's stories that it's not fair. Like it, I've heard a lot of unhealthy comments around that, how deaf people feel about their children when things are not going well. So, one problem for us as CODAs is when we are born and we can hear, we go to a different population set than our parents. We go into the hearing population set. And this prevents us from understanding that depth of harm because we are not tracking codas. We do not have a good repository of collective information. We are not recognized. We are overlooked, and we're marginalized. Deaf people are like, oh no, and we hear people, and where do we fit in? Because they don't count us in the deaf statistics, but our experience isn't the typical hearing experience. I mean, a lot of hearing people have toxic parents and crappy childhoods and all of that, but we all have crappy parents and whatever, and they're deaf, right? Some of us have both, so yay. But we need to be able to figure out as codas, like what are our ACE scores? So what are our educational attainment levels? What is our income mobility compared to our parents who are more likely unemployed or underemployed than they're actually capable of? And our income mobility as codas, are we able to get over a lot of our parents who are on supplemental or government incomes? And the mental health prevalence in the deaf community is a lot higher because they are so marginalized, and they have that developmental disruption already, and they don't have people who are equipped to address it. But what's even worse is that it's happening. It's happening right now in real time. We like I watched it happen, you watched it happen. We see like deaf kids who just don't have language, and it's like, oh my gosh, how do we cooperate and encourage more sign language? So we don't know about Codas trauma exposure. We know that they are parentified and adultified, almost across the board. And even if it's not obvious in unobvious ways. And so one example I can give you is my son plays for a baseball team. And the parents all get together and they say to all the parents, in this little meeting, okay, everybody, we'll see you tomorrow at 11, make sure, blah, blah, blah. And they give them this whole checklist or whatever. And because my husband is deaf and he goes over to this little meeting, he misses it. And so after the meeting, the coaches will go up to my son and they will reiterate it to him what time he needs to show up and what time, what he's responsible for. And so they're actually putting additional responsibilities on him that they would not put on a hearing child, which is it's a difference. There is a treatment difference, but we are not capturing that through our surveys of children who are going through this, our surveys of adults who've gone through this. So we need to have, because that's a microaggression in a way, because well, they should talk to his father, right? That's his responsibility, not my son's. But we CODAs, that's all the time, all the time. Uh, we also can be very exposed to trauma more so than say hearing children, given similar circumstances, because when the door, we're the ones who open the door, or we're the ones who answer the phone, or we're the ones who are kind of the front line, hearing person who will either take that information, or if it's the middle of the night and something's being happening outside, oftentimes they're kind of in the thick of that, even though the parents don't want them, or whatever. uh Sometimes things are what they are, emergencies are emergencies. Um and we just had one mother who was arrested in front of her coded children, just won some lawsuit over a very similar arrest experience where her children are involved. So burnout rates, which we I would love to know for Codas, like what's the percentage difference? What is it higher? Like I would bet that maybe it is, because we also carry a high degree of complex trauma as well. Um, that parentification frequency, how often those little things happen, and then the health disparities as well, because sometimes because of that reluctance of deaf individuals to go to appointments for themselves. Sometimes they also have reluctance to make these appointments for their children because there might not be an interpreter there, or they get there and they're so upset that there was an interpreter there and they leave rather than continue with the appointment, which prioritizes their access over the child's health needs. And while both are very important, it can lead to the way we see our importance, our self-care, our self-esteem, and how we care for ourselves in the future or not. So this is a research gap. It's not a deficit claim. I'm not saying codes are messed up. And somebody in the feedback had used like shortcomings as a word. Like, I want to know about my shortcomings. I thought, oh no, they're not shortcomings, they're adaptations. And what we want is we want more examination of this. And what we need to do is start to speak about this. And I know that it's not comfortable, uh, because our deaf parents feel some kind of way about this in some cases. My parents are both gone. So like, I don't have that problem. And I'm going with the belief that they have always had my back. And in this, they would definitely have my back. So that's where I'm going with it. And we do have other things coming up that so some of their domains that we need to look at for specifically Coda, like boundary development, resilience patterns. So uh, there's more in what the Coda experience is that I think is a very important and instrumental physical factor. So I did a workshop on the Coda brain before, and I do feel that Codas, if we widen that lens of the impact of language deprivation on deaf individuals, because what we're saying is there are double the people or more, because deaf people generally have more than just one kid. If we double the size of the people who are impacted by language deprivation, we have more of a voice because we're impacted. And going back to this, we can love and honor our parents, and we can share our truth of how we are impacted by the system. It does coexist. So if we can share our experiences, talk about this, have dialogue, even with among our parents, with our parents' friends, people in the community, our own friends, our colleagues. What we want is to figure out where these boundaries are, and like what we're going to take on this. Like I don't how you identify yourself, like I don't know if that's anybody else's business or problem, right? But we also want to have some sort of differentiation. We are not hearing people because, well, our brains are different. Like we're just physically different. Our experiences are very different. What we understand is very, very different. And we don't have any recognition of that. And until we get recognition and have more research and more study in this area, it is a fascinating science. And I believe that Codas have a very interesting role in what that science will be for the future, and conscious awakening, and also other fun and interesting stuff that, well, maybe a little crazy for today. But so it also allows for conscious parenting. We if we want to stop what's going on with past Codas and what we experience, what we have to do is we have to empower parents with this information of how they are parenting their Coda children. So it's only fair that we let them know. And if we let them know and they don't want to do any better, well, then that tells us something, doesn't it? But, I'm sure that we want to give them the opportunity and definitely allow them to be the best parents that they can be. And they can do that with more information. So advocacy, like the more information we have, the more we know, the more we can advocate for parents, for Codas in schools. Codas because they are different learners, their brains are different, they also need maybe different learning approaches. But we need to be talking about this. We need to get these Codas help, because there are Codas who are they're suffering. The ones in this workshop, it's a privilege to be here with you, and there are still so many out there that are suffering and going through this and feeling very alone. So what we want to do is start collecting information and support, and make sure that we stop this cycle. We Codas have to be recognized that we're part of this cycle so that we can stop it. So I'm calling for data. We need research, classification, funding, policy recognition, and Codas deserve empirical visibility. So our experience does matter. Okay. So that's my soapbox. Naming means agency. When we name patterns, we gain choice. We can choose to change things or not go along with the status quo anymore. So, what is next in this? What is next? So, the wellness series will continue. And based on your feedback, which is super, super important. So, based on your feedback, the next one will be childhood trauma symptoms, and it'll be very specifically focused on like some of these childhood trauma symptoms and what we see in Codas and in deaf people. So that Codas will be like, oh, and then, oh yeah, I know that. And again, it may not be your mom, but you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that. Like I know that person who does that. So we'll know those things when we hear them. Understanding complex trauma is another one that I feel would be very important. And then healing therapies and treatment approaches. That's one that everybody also asked for. Like how do we heal from this? Like how, yeah, okay. We know the depth of harm. What do we do next? So we do at my agency, I have my own counseling agency. We do healing circles online. We do trainings. We do support, processing groups, things like that. We also have self-help courses, skill-based workshops. I do a few workshops. It's so crazy. And then community dialogue. So there are groups like you can just join the group for this if you'd like to. And then some of those depends on which state you're in. Then therapy. So like because I'm licensed in only a few states, and Amber, I don't know if Amber's here, but Amber is licensed in other states, and Ben, he's also licensed in Arizona and other states too. So it just depends on the state. For me, three states, Arizona, Minnesota, Ohio, are those three states. And like I do trauma therapy, I do EMDR intensives and other, fun stuff. So I have to also let you know. So I have a nonprofit called the Coda Legacy Foundation. And it came from a book. And I think it was My Coda Legacy. And that just gave me the idea of like we need to start collecting our stories. We need to start collecting our stories. So this is going to be one of those repositories for collecting stories. And the goal of this foundation is to or this project is to start to gather that information for research purposes so that we can start to get recognition and funding and work on certain issues within our community. And so bigger celebration, Coda Fest. So Coda Fest is coming up. It's brand new this year. It is held where Deaf Timber Fest is usually held. It's the same camp. Melissa, are you here? Is Melissa here?
I'm here.
Oh, hi. You want to say a few things about Coda Fest?
Okay, sure. Hi, you guys. I'm excited about this Coda Fest. Everything that Joy is doing, all the experience that us Codas have been through, all that our parents have been through, and the rich experiences a lot of us have the privilege to learn about, share about at Coda conferences and retreat spaces. This is just opening it up to our deaf family, our hearing family, spouses, partners. So Coda Fest is going to be like an all-inclusive package, workshops, fun, a big glow up party, happy hour, and we're collaborating with the Camp Talali and the World Deaf Timber Fest. And really exciting. They're putting together like a big night market. Anyway, we really hope that some of you from everywhere can come and represent your space, bring your family. Anyway, we should be releasing the information very soon. You could find us on Facebook, or just join to be a part of the team and volunteer. Anyway, thanks, Joy. Whoop, whoop. Thanks.
Coda
Thank
Fest.
you for this awesome.
So it's Coda Fest. What we're going to be doing is it's going to be storytelling and starting to really collect that information, and have a place where we have that kind of flooding of coda-ness, and it's a way to introduce some of our interesting quirks to our family members, our parents, and our loved ones, and even our children. So
And it focuses big on the Coda Legacy Project, which is a nonprofit to collect our signed experiences, stories through our deaf and hearing space. So anyway, I just had to add that. That's very important. Big part of the work. So the people that bring information to state legislation, our government to fight for language access, this is kind of a very high ticket item. So we hope everybody's hearts and spaces in it too. Yep. Okay.
Absolutely. And there's legislative efforts everywhere. There are things going on across the globe that are so exciting, and there are a lot of Coda powerhouses out there that are working, and we just want to make sure that we work together and get recognized, and see how we can change some things for not only us but future deaf and Coda generations. So anyways, deaf children become deaf parents, and silence does not have to be our inheritance. Anyway, thank you all so much. I'll say thank you, but I will definitely be here for questions. Any questions I can answer for anybody.
Can we come back on?
Absolutely.
I have a question. This is Celeste. I have a question. There's been a lot of discussions online about Coda in reference to them teaching sign language. I want to know how people feel about that, because it's kind of a sticky situation, because you do have coders who are fluent, but then you have those who are not. And so it becomes a little bit misleading about coders should be able to sign, teach classes, ASL. And I'm a little concerned about that, or I'm sure a lot of people are concerned about that, especially deaf community. We have people who, especially, some of the deaf leaders, they don't look at coders as coders. They look at us as hearing, like you mentioned. And so I'm kind of trying to figure out what is a good way to really begin to get deaf people to understand that, hey, you can't keep putting us in this hearing box. We're not hearing, we are coders. But I've been trying to figure out, how can we be very polite about, hey, listen, understand how you feel. You've been oppressed for many years, or, for the hearing community, but there's got to be a new way of introducing and allowing them to look at us in a different way, so that they don't treat us like they treat hearing people. I mean, what would you suggest would be the best way? Because I think, yes, I hear what you're saying as far as the survey and doing research and all, but that'll take time. But I think we need to start introducing it now and finding a way to allow deaf people oh, okay, okay. And I think we just have to really start putting it out there, because a lot of us, we're already adults, but we still have these children, coded children, that's going to continue to go through that. And so I think that if we're able to kind of share that, then maybe they can change their way of thinking about coders, but we also have to educate too, in a way that they were like, oh, okay, get it. But so, I mean, I just want to have a little bit, insight on that. What do you think about something like that? What would be the easiest way for us to begin this conversation and allow deaf parents and deaf people, hey, stop putting us over here with these hearing people. We're not there. We're over here. And so that they become comfortable with what we're talking about, and not feel like we're taking control. Because I'll be honest with you, I feel like there's a lot of things happening with Coda now. Coda's, doing a lot of things now in comparison to the past. And I think there's a little bit of threat for them. I really do. I think that they're feeling, oh, the Codas are running things now and they want to start things. And it's not that. It's just that, times have changed. And I think that we've come a long way, and we've recognized the things that we didn't realize about ourselves. And so I don't know. I just like to put that out there. What are your thoughts? What is everybody's thoughts? Anybody's thoughts?
I will. So I teaching ASL was never on my list, and I taught 1 year, and that was only because I felt I had to. So I'm the wrong person to ask, but I like to hear from Melissa because this is something that she has to talk about because she is an ASL teacher. So she might have some personal insight in this.
Kind of weird when you said she is an ASL teacher. I had a little shame come up, like, yeah, but when it comes to it, I've started to step back from all this insult and hurt feelings mode and, like try to understand people's perspective. Like, whoa, you are my family. How could you hurt me so bad? How could you tell me I'm not capable of teaching not just my language, but my culture, my heritage, my roots, How could you say that? In the deaf world right now, there's a big division. I mean, it's been like this. You've got hearing raised deaf people, you've got deaf school raised deaf people, and then you've got your other minority groups, depending on where you live, you grew up, your resources. I grew up like a poor Coda girl, poor deaf family on the island of Guam, a big minority in a different space. So I feel like I come with so much, and I've interviewed deaf people, Codas, hearing people for ASL teaching. Doesn't mean because you're deaf, you're qualified to teach. You got to have charisma, but also what's happening is who are the people that are upset? And I kind of looked at it as a whole, not officially, statistically, but like, who are you? You are deaf people who were raised in the hearing world. You had hearing parents. Your sign language source is interpreters. You don't have a coda. You don't have a child. You're very disconnected from us. But now that deaf person has a child, a coda raises and has children. Oh, the value of us codas is different. We are family. So we are outsiders to those deaf people. We've never been connected. And do I have a place to say, sometimes inside I'm like, I don't want to say like you're hearing, but my culture is more deaf than yours, and you're deaf. I'm not going to compete. It's not a competition. It's really like representing, at the end of the day, representing our culture, our space, our world, and advocating for our parents, showing the world how can we teach ASL students to be allies for our people, our family? How can we do that the most authentic way? So who's mad? They're mad. Why? Maybe if I was them, maybe it'd have envy, like, wow, you're hearing, but you got the deaf experience. You got to go to all the deaf camps, the deaf church, the deaf sports, everything like that. I feel guilty sometimes. That's where that shame comes in because I'm like, but it wasn't my fault. It came with a lot of baggage, a lot of experience, a lot of hardships, and I'm carrying the weight of my deaf family. So sorry, I'll cut it, but yeah. It's big. And how do you forgive? You can't fight that. You can't change their mind. They have hearing loss and they learn deaf culture in college or high school later. Deaf power. It's a different story.
Well, and even going back to like what we were talking about earlier in the presentation of uh, that one of the complaints has been about, well, you're taking jobs from people who are deaf, and deaf people can't get jobs the way hearing people can. But well, we've got to go back to, is it, do CODIS have great outcomes in terms of employment? Because we also have a lot of CODIS who go in the military or into jail. So a lot of legal involvement in CODA lives sometimes. So there's a lot to that question. Well,
Yeah.
it's not necessary. What they're believing isn't necessarily true. So how we combat that is, I don't know. Marianne, did you want to add to
sorry.
that? Oh, I'm sorry.
Really quick, just to how to change it. Coda Fest. Spaces like this, bringing our deaf people to the table and eating together once again and understanding. So Coda Fest is going to be just that, the goal. Yeah. Okay.
I think a lot of you touched on this. There's the economics. I remember 30 years ago, ooh, maybe 40 years ago, I was one of the few hearing or CODA ASLTA certified teachers in Manhattan. And I was very embraced because I did the work. I went through all the linguistics courses, and then I realized, oh my goodness, um, I would not be qualified to teach an ASL class just because my parents used ASL and I grew up using ASL as a first language. It was really it was a mixture, PFC. It was not a pure form. So I made it a point to teach it in a pure form. And yes, there were a lot of deaf people that were teachers who didn't have sometimes the benefit of what I learned. And their teaching was, to be honest, sometimes not as rigorous and not as good. However, eventually it all evened out. They got courses, they got degrees, and eventually I had to think about the economics. And then I decided I was approached to take over a program at LaGuardia Community College because I taught there as an adjunct. But a deaf woman who was eminently qualified wanted that job. And that was the first time I said, you know what? I could do a lot of other things. Her world is limited. And I just declined in competing for that position. So I think, like a family, everyone has to treat each other with respect, know what your skill set is, and be honest. And sometimes, yeah, defer to the deaf community. Right now in the interpreting world, we all know when I started out 40 years ago, I was the girl in the bubble before closed captioning. Then I interpreted for the mayor's office. All of those interpreting jobs, whether it be at Yankee Stadium for sports events, they're all deaf people for the most part. And I'm okay with that, but be open enough that to know that there are not qualified ASL teachers or interpreters to do these forums, and allow Codas and even hearing people. If you got the goods and you're a member of the ASLTA organization, you got the goods.
Qualifications are matter.
Yeah. And before we
Absolutely.
go on, I want to just make sure the interpreters, are you okay? I want us to stop at 8:15 just for your sake. Okay, you guys okay? Okay. Just out of respect for the
Catherine,
interpreters, yeah.
welcome. It must be very late for you.
You good? Interpreters? Yeah? Okay. 7 minutes.
Catherine, I can't hear you.
Who are you talking to?
Catherine.
Oh,
I thought that there was somebody else before me.
yeah.
Okay,
Who,
let me,
who
oh,
may?
there is.
I can't pronounce her name properly because I'm Irish. Sorry. The lady in the pink, yeah,
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, it's orange
You
on my
before
end, but
you.
thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that. So hi, it's Kume in Story of My Life. It's a weird
Come
name.
in.
Right. Yes. Mixed race,
I'm, a-
Coda.
I'm Irish.
All
You're all
good.
right.
Yeah. So I wanted to speak on this. I have a master's degree in teaching ASL, right? And I've dealt with this my whole career, right? Even within my cohort, there were half hearing and half deaf. And we wrestled with this and had conversations about it, right? And I'm fortunate to have that because whenever it comes up, I'm able to discuss it in ways that make sense to people, but it takes a while to get the verbiage down. So first of all, we have privilege as codas. We can hear. We have many job opportunities, right? And I think that's a topic that comes in this conversation. The other thing is that the same things that are used against deaf people are also used against codas in this conversation. Tokenism and actual skills and professionalism, right? My daughter took an ASL class and the teacher was deaf. Hooray, check the box. But teaching was terrible. My daughter was so unenthusiastic about taking ASL, and I thought this should not be the way, you know? So we push aside great qualified teachers because of their hearing status. And that's where it's like, if you use these words that deaf people are familiar with, tokenism, you know, or giving somebody an opportunity when they don't actually have the skills without support, these types of things, it's like, yeah, we're being judged by the same things and by deaf people as well doing it to us, right? So what's done to them is done to us as well. So I also point out people like Stokey, right? He was hearing and an outsider, right? But he opened doors for the deaf community and gave validation to ASL as a language, right? So it's just like, don't push all your allies out the door. You know, recognize who is committed and who will support and open doors. And who was the other person who was just saying, you know, it's okay to take a position of authority with the intent to open doors for other deaf people and step out, right? If it has to be, but people don't know that intention oftentimes, you know? So I have to, when I take those positions of authority, I tell people that I am opening doors for deaf people, right? You have to like let them know that that's what you're doing with that position. Otherwise, they look at you like, oh, mooch in the system, a hearing person, Coda, because I don't own that hearing label is taking over, right? So that's kind of how I've approached it. Some of those vocabulary, some of those storytelling, and then saying, hey, this is what you're familiar with. Guess what? You're doing the same thing to us.
Yeah, real quick now, Catherine, I know you're going to go, I'm going to let you go, but real quick, I so like appreciate what you just said because it is so, so true. And I think it's a matter of us educating. We just have to get comfortable, get deaf people to be comfortable and give those perspectives, especially about Stokely. I mean, do they know about Stokely? A lot of them don't, you know, like, they, you know, he was a hearing man. He's the one that started, ba, 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 you know what I mean? And so once they know the history, they're like, oh, okay, listen, don't keep pushing the hearing out. Don't keep pushing the code. They have the skills to teach you, to, you know, expose you to it. And then, you know, but this is new. This is new. You don't want to stop the progress. You know what I mean? All right, Catherine.
Well,
Yeah, I
I
always
can
I
add
always
real
tell people
quickly.
that Gallaudet was just a nice hearing man,
Yeah.
right?
Uh,
Just a nice hearing man.
yeah.
Yeah. We got 3 minutes.
I missed the all of the presentation because I got my time zones mixed up. So I'm here in the southwest of Ireland, and it is right now this minute after midnight.
Ooh, ooh.
But I so wanted to be a part of this conversation because I loved the fact that it was organized by Codas of Color. Thank you.
Thank you.
I say Codas of Color, but my face is red because I'm very Irish and I've got a lot of freckles. But there's a thing about difference. There's the skin color of difference, but there's the I've been struggling with this. And I'm very grateful for Codas of Color for organizing it this evening because there's a lot of issues that are happening in Ireland at the moment, and it's in relation to what, and it's only because of what is happening in America. The people in Ireland are listening to America, and it started off with two coders deciding to have an ASL app. Two coders decided to have an app about ASL. And here in Ireland, and our population is very small. So the implosions are bigger. Yeah.
Yeah,
Why?
we've been listening to that.
No, but I just keep, why? We are native of our parents.
Mm-hmm.
We are born, our parents decided to have sex and they had us. and we came out into the world. And we have to justify our existence. We have to justify our language, our community, our culture. The people that love us, respect us, are deaf parents that have us. But those that have yet to have children don't understand. Because they were oppressed, they are now oppressing. And the easiest population to oppress are us, because they can't fight the hearing population, but they can fight us.
Okay.
I did.
For the interpreter's sake. Catherine, thank you so much for your words. I see Sophia is there. Sophia, did you want to say something before we go?
Yeah.
Hi, yes. I just wanted like a quick review of like I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I just see it says the space between she, her.
Oh, Joy.
Joy. Okay, beautiful. I'm so sorry, my son. I just wanted a quick review of the PTSD thing. Did you say that Codas are statistically have a higher like rate of PTSD than people in the military?
So deaf people, their tests come back that way, and so do Codas. When they have that high, when you have highly activated parents, yes. So complex trauma, CPTSD, is something that is very prevalent in the deaf community, and that's what we marinate in, is someone or even more than someone that's going through a really traumatic experience and hypervigilance. So that will be the next workshop, is like, what are these child oddly specific childhood trauma symptoms that we go through. So yes. And we're talking about like high scores. We're talking about like just maybe, no, we're talking about high scores. So yes, that's in my clinical experience for sure.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I know we all have to go, but I just want to make sure. So I got this from a screenshot on Bonnie's page, and I don't know Bonnie. There's a woman named Bonnie, I believe she's a Coda. I don't know her personally. I just saw her page through a suggested list, added her, saw this, and I was like, I gotta join. I don't want to miss the next one. I'd love to learn more. I'd love to be more involved. So please, like, if there's any way, any link or anybody I need to follow directly so that I can keep up to date and I can be on time and be more involved next time, I would love to do that. It was such a pleasure being here. And I need to go get a check for this PTSD thing.
We'll go through a checklist next time.
So thanks for joining us tonight. I mean, this has been wonderful, and there's so much more to talk about. And Joy, you have been such a joy. And I hate that we have to cut off like this, but I'm always like conscious of our interpreters. We can't overwork our interpreters. They volunteer for us.
Thank you
Just
so
want to keep
much.
them in their mind. Thank you, Hossein.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
appreciate
Nay.
you so much.
Yeah. And one last thing, Joy, what about the CEUs? How do people go about the CEUs?
So I did put in the link for the what my English, my second language survey. Yes. So that thing, fill that out, and then if you signed in and then you filled that one out, send it, and that will get you your certificate of attendance.
Can you somebody put it back in again, please? Back into the link back in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Celeste?
Yes.
Celeste?
Yes.
I think you should put in the chat, if people are interested in following us, to become a member of Coda. That would be a great idea. That way she won't lose track about how to find any up and coming panel discussions or workshops.
Absolutely. And there is a Codas of Color WhatsApp group as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's a lot of us who have social media reposted.
So you want to type that, Donald? Go ahead. Donald? Okay. All right. I want to thank everyone for being here this night, this evening. I appreciate this. Really had a nice turnout
Thank you
tonight.
all for
And
coming.
we'll see you next time. Okay. Catherine,
Thank you.
thank you. I'll see you. Are you going to be at conference? Are you going to be at conference? Catherine?
I'm not going to America because I don't know if I can get in and out safely.
Oh, yeah.
However, we can do this online. But can I ask if Codas of Color would be interested in connecting with Coda UK in Ireland online?
Absolutely.
Because what you have to say and what we have to say, I think it would be really lovely if we can just come together in numbers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to think this is about just us coders of color. This is about connecting with everyone. We just happen to do this to encourage more coders of color to be involved.
But it's about knowledge, experience, color, experience.
Absolutely.
Because we're all in the same place.
That's right. Totally agree.
Celeste saw a gap in the community and she said, "Hey, like, come over here."
Yeah, we'll love that. We'll love that. Yes, for sure.
So,
like for sure, if we all wanted to come to Ireland, come over.
Say that again.
She said she wants us to go visit her in Ireland.
Oh, I will. For sure. I would come. I
want to go to Tralee. Tralee is beautiful. You should follow Catherine because she takes the most beautiful pictures.
Yeah, I've been following her. I've seen a lot of her pictures. I've been
gorgeous.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it looks like a fake Instagram or something. It's just beautiful.
Come over for time out.
Donald, was you able to type that in? Did you put that in the chat, Donald?
Celeste, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Thank you for being here
tonight. Thank you.
Thank you all.
It's in there.
Yeah, and thank you again, Hussein and
Sophia,
Mary Lourdes.
are you able to carry?
You.
Sophia, are you able to see it in the chat?
I saw somebody put codasofcolor.org to find the WhatsApp group.
Yes.
So I see the website. I also somebody sent me a link for the PTSD. But the link is not working. So those are the two things. And then I filled out 2 questionnaires. One was a survey, and then the other was just asking for my email and my name. So I did both of those as well.
Okay.
So hopefully I don't get lost.
Yeah, and if anybody missed anything, just reach out and then we'll get the paperwork that you need to get the CEUs that you need. And these are PPO CEUs, so like, yay!
I have a question real quick about the CEUs. I fat fingered my RID number. So do I just fill out the form again?
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Only if you want it to apply to your number.
Thank you, everybody.
Let me know when they're like, that's the right one or something.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, family.
Have a good night.
Thank you so much, family.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good night.
I think you need to close us out.
Jordan. All right, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Hi, right here. Sorry, can I ask one more question? I know time's been running out, and that's my bad. I kind of came in kind of slow here.
Who's talking?
Oh, sorry. Right here.
Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to mention, and not to name drop, but Sheila Jacobs told me about this link, and I just wanted to try to do my best to get involved. So if there was any information, you send to her, send to me, I wanted to get involved. So like this kind of sprung up, and I just kind of trying to get through a busy day and show up and just put a name with the face and get involved the best I can.
So you're looking for the Coda stuff?
Yeah, well, Codas of Color and just, those organizations that helped me. I had a couple of questions about research study and empirical research because I'm trying to find a dissertation for my PhD. And it's a slow moving process, but after I just got my master's, I'm like working towards this. And I want to get involved with people just to, understand better and know how to use more application versus just research, like research with application. So I'm putting my name out there, breaking out of my comfort zone, you could say, so I can just talk to people about this. But yeah, as Sheila Jacobs let me know about this, I am getting involved, and I just want to, last minute, I know we all got to log out. Just want to put my name out there and say hello.
Where are you located?
California, the Bay Area.
Hey,
Okay.
Rhett, what's up, man? I met Rhett
Hey, I
before.
saw you. I saw you. What's up, my guy?
Yeah, I think I still have your. I think I still have your number.
Yeah,
I'll send you, and I can add you if you're not in. And then they can approve it if you're not in that Codas of Color group chat.
definitely text me.
I
Let
still
me
have
know.
your number though, man. It's good
Yeah.
to see you.
Yeah, no, it's good to see you. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
exactly. I'm like, what's up, what's up? I see some of my people, no, new faces, old faces,
yeah.
definitely. So no, just let me know. I know my plate can get kind of full, but I just want to try to find a way to get involved as much as I can until I can become fully immersed. So if you give me that opportunity, I'm there for it.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
no, we're going to be doing this ongoing. So keep your eyes open.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Take care.
Well, I
Nice
got have a
meeting
good
you.
one. All
And
right,
I
man.
got some stuff I'm
Take
gonna
care.
send you too. So yeah, I'll put you in there. No
Got you.
problem.
Appreciate you.
Good night.
Small,
Let you have
small
your break.
world. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate both of you.
Yeah,
Good
thanks.
job.
Thank you,
Thank
thank you,
you
thank you. Yeah.
No
for putting
problem.
up with me. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
I'll call you Joy later tomorrow.
Please. Okay. Sounds
Okay.
good.
Bye.
Bye.